You probably got approved budget to hire some people, and now you're in a position where you've got to actually do that. So what's the best way to do it? Because if you're like a lot of organizations, you've probably felt the pain of having to hire somebody and then turn them over and having to hire somebody again and again and again and again. The reason that we have very low turnover is because of our hiring process. And it starts with incredible clarity about what you want the person you're hiring to do. What ends up happening if you hire somebody to do nothing specific is that they don't do anything specific.
You can teach anybody anything, especially with the tools we have right now, but you cannot teach personality traits. You just can't.
We're going to teach you how to turn that job description into interview questions and into an evaluation form and finally into KPIs for that role so that when you hire your next person, they're going to last. You probably got approved budget to hire some people, and now you're in a position where you've got to actually do that. So what's the best way to do it? Because if you're like a lot of organizations, you've probably felt the pain of having to hire somebody and then turn them over and having to hire somebody again and again and again and again. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but you understand the point. One of the things that we've done exceptionally well, and Justin is a big reason for that, is when we hire somebody, we have very low turnover. And the reason that we have very low turnover is because of our hiring process. It starts with incredible clarity about what you want the person you're hiring to do. So oftentimes we'll talk to people who need to add a person to their department. They're feeling that pain of being short-staffed. And when we ask them, what do you need this person to do? They have a lot of generalities and they just need extra help and someone to do this kind of category of work but nothing specific. And what ends up happening if you hire somebody to do nothing specific is that they don't do anything specific and they fail. They get frustrated because they're not making progress and they end up leaving. They go somewhere else, somewhere new, where they most likely start that process over and over again.
Yeah, they kind of, it's kind of one of those situations where you end up, not only do you feel like the position I hired or the person that I hired isn't doing what you felt like they needed to do, but then the person who's in that position, they often feel like, man, they're kind of all over the place. There's no real direct line of if I do X, Y, and Z, I can see a promotion or a raise, or because everything's just kind of up in the air. And a lot of people get weighed down with the feel of, man, I need somebody. That weight never feels lifted because they don't give them anything super, super specific for them to handle or take off of your plate.
So what do? When we hire somebody, we think about the department they're going into, and we start asking ourselves a lot of questions about how do we do things in this department? You have an idea of what the output looks like. What's the end goal? What is a job well done for the department? And then you zoom back out and you go, what is it that we have to do in order to make that happen? What are all the moving pieces?
Mm-hmm.
What happens from beginning to end for each of those things, each of those outputs? In facilities maintenance, it's completed work orders, right? So how do we get a work order from a problem exists, or maybe it's a preventative or recurring work order, something proactive, but how do we get it from we created it to it's done? And you want to spend time with your entire team, the people that I have in the room currently, and think about that. And one exercise that we like to use when we're doing this is, all right, if this is the goal and these are the processes, in light of what we're doing right now, what's working, what's broken, what's missing, what's confusing? And these are great ways to get information out of people. And so you start with what's working. What are we doing well? What should we keep doing? What do we need to...
what lag measures might already be working? Exactly.
And then what's broken? What are we trying to do right now, but it's not getting us the results we need? What process needs to be revisited? What maybe it's something that used to work and now it doesn't anymore. And get that out. What's missing? What do we not have that we need to have in order to hit the goal or achieve the result that we're trying to achieve? And then finally, what's confusing? What are we doing, but no one really understands how or why? And
maybe it's stuck in another person's head, or maybe it's a process that's in somebody's head, not written down on paper, something like that.
Right. Now, running through this process is going to give you a lot to talk about, and you should talk about these things. With what's broken, how do we fix it? What can we do? With what's missing, that's easy. What do we need to put in place to make it not miss anymore? And what's confusing? What is confusing about those things? And how can we create clarity around it? Ideally, if you're doing this exercise, you're writing all these things down in these categories, but you're also recording yourself with one of the tools that are out there like Granola or Gemini or Otter, and you're getting a transcript of this conversation that you can later feed to a prompt and actually turn this into something concrete, a plan, a process, whatever it is. But this process, this running this exercise will get a lot of information out. It's going to give you a lot of questions you can answer, and it will help you create a lot of clarity around what it is that your department is doing and needs to do going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you're the leader of this department or company or whatever it is, you're going to feel this pull to interject, to direct the conversation, to give your opinions. My advice to you is shut up. Don't do it. Let your team talk. All right. This is not about you. It's about getting information out of your team. And the more you do this well, the better information you get. And the better information you get, the more data you have to use to make decisions. So be quiet. You are more of an editor after the fact in this scenario than you are a creator. So don't contribute, just take notes, ask follow-up questions. Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that? Do not defend, do not explain, do not shut down your people while they're having this conversation.
Nailed it, buddy.
Justin, from your perspective, you've been on the other side of these things, like as somebody in the room, and you've been the leader in the front of the room, but as somebody that's in the room, what happens in your mind? Defend something that you say or try to like push back on you or give my opinion. What happens in your head when I do that?
In my brain, now mine might work a little bit different than other people, but in my brain, I want to convince you even harder.
Does.
I think it brings us back to what we spoke about a few episodes ago when we were talking about how we hire people, right? This is why when you're ready to hire someone and you're looking at them, personality is a big thing. You got to understand the people that you're working with. So when you guys get in a creative space where you're trying to create a job description or of what needs to be done for the help that's coming in, you want to know how to get the most out of your folks, right? We can't teach somebody to care. I think we've said that before, like it's very, very hard to teach somebody to care. So personality is everything. And you really want to put your people in a space where they feel like they can give their opinion. You do that a great deal. Like, right, when we talk about, we do this with our customers a lot, right? I always say a lot of our great ideas literally come from just listening to our folks when we have these open forums when we're trying to solve a problem. You might think you know how to solve the problem or feel like you know kind of how to solve the problem or what needs to be done. But you'll be surprised if you allow your folks to kind of just freely open, talk about how they think the problem should work out. You'll be surprised how quickly they kind of come up with a solution themselves. And what that really does is you don't want to be a roadblock or stop somebody or tell them, no, we need to do it this way or quote unquote defend your opinion, but you also want to push them to a spot where they kind of come up with it on their own, because then they're going to take ownership of it as well. It's a little bit different when we're talking like about creating a hiring guide, but when we talk about bringing people on, you really want them to own those ideas, because by allowing them to come up with their own idea, they're going to own a lot of ownership is going to take over in that aspect, because they're feeling like they're doing something that's their idea. They're going to want to perform. As far as hiring guide, they're the ones in there doing it. You want to be able to hear their ideas, their perspective. When you do that with me, like I said, I think a little bit different. It makes me want to dig in deeper and think a little bit harder. I don't really get like blocked up and be like, oh, he doesn't want to hear this opinion. But
that can't happen.
That can happen. That definitely can happen. And to most people, it probably will be that way. But again, it goes back to just knowing who you're hiring. You could teach people processes and stuff, but you cannot teach personality traits is very hard to teach.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, and probably in most cases, unless you have other strong personalities in the room, it's better to be quiet. Most leaders underestimate the weight of their position. So they think that they're being welcoming. They think that they're having a conversation. They think that they're challenging someone's thought process. But what's actually happening is that person feels shut down, because no matter what, no matter how safe you create of an environment, there's still part of that person's head that knows this person can fire me. And so they're going to adjust their behavior accordingly.
Who doesn't want to be a yes person and be like, oh, that's a great idea, sir? That's why it's best to just ask questions. Ask questions in a way that doesn't seem like you're, it's more of like, wow, that's an idea. How did you get to that spot? Not, where did you come up with this? versus being like, how did you get to this solution? Versus being like, where did you come up with it? There are ways that you can ask the same question in a way that's going to have them dig deeper and not bury it. Because that's the last thing you want, is somebody to have a great idea and you ask a question in a certain way and now they want to bury it and make it their idea is now gone, and they're being yes people and thinking, telling you what you think you want to hear. If leadership always had the best ideas, we would handle everything, and that's just impossible. Your team's got good ideas. You need to be open to hearing them and dig deeper in them by asking good, clarifying questions that aren't, threatening or accusing or defensive. And that's why I say a lot of times it's best to just be like, oh, I like that. What else do you think? Versus being like, I don't know what a good question would be that would be defensive, but like, being like, oh, you don't like how we're doing things now? It's like, well, that was not really how they meant that. It was more of like, here's an idea that they had.
Yeah, I feel more of the compulsion to explain away. So if somebody says, hey, here's a problem, I want to be like, all right, here's how we ended up there. Right.
Yeah.
Not that I'm disagreeing with you that there's a problem, but I want to because I feel the sense of responsibility. I want to defend the decision making and the circumstances and, give this context around like, well, here's how we ended up here. It doesn't change anything. It's still a problem. It's still confusing. It's still missing, whatever the case is. Now, one thing, when you're using this exercise in the context of knowing that you're going to hire somebody, there's two areas of output or two columns that you're going to want to pay attention to. And that's what's working. You can assign people, you can hire new people to do what's working so that you can work on what is the other things, right? The other column is anything that's missing. So if there's something you guys ought to be doing but can't because you don't have the personnel to do it, that's what this person could do. And so you can look at the output of this and get a better understanding of what you need a new hire to actually perform. And based on these things, you're going to have skill sets and history. It's an aptitude that you'll look for in a new hire to actually perform this well. So that's where this exercise comes in, and that's what can be very helpful.
Absolutely.
So you've identified what someone new can come in and help you do. Now you need to go out and find these people, and you're going to need a job description. So just like every other month, we've been talking about creating processes, distilling those processes into assignments. Within those assignments, creating SOPs, and with those SOPs, creating KPIs, things you're going to actually track so you can have scoreboards. So you can't just say, we're looking for a whatever. What you need to do is say, what is the performing that role, performing that task? What does it look like from beginning to end? How are these people going to be spending their day? And you're going to turn that into an SOP. And we have a framework for doing this. It's in the implementation section of our guide. And you can see how you can turn a process document or a conversation about a set of processes into this standard operating procedure. And you'll also see how you can turn the standard operating procedure into an actual job description. So that's all of the framework or all of the foundational work that needs to happen before you even start advertising for your role. You got to get all this work done. You need to be really specific, because if you're not, you're going to burn people out. People want to know that they're doing a good job. They want to come into a role where they have a lot of specificity, and they know if I do these things, it's going to result in this outcome, and I can measure and track and see that I'm performing well.
Yeah, they want to know is managing vendor relationships, like that's too broad, right? Or what am I doing with them? Because managing vendor relationships could be finding vendors, could also be, managing them and is like, where are these things, right? You could be policing them. So, you really want to narrow it down to like, or it could be training. Yeah, it could be any of those things, but you really want to narrow it down and not be broad, right? We all have those. It's kind of like people put on applications or their resume, right? It's just a bunch of like lists of broad stuff with nothing tied to it. You can't have your job description be the same thing where it's just a bunch of broad stuff. And then they come and they find out after they've interviewed and then they get the job that managing vendors is actually just calling them every day. And they didn't know that because you just put manage vendor relationships and not you are going to be picking up the phone and calling these vendors and getting stuff from them. And so you could lose somebody in the training. You could hire them, get them in, get them on their computers, get them signed up, get them filled in with everything. They get through a week worth of training. They're like, okay, well, this isn't what I meant by managing vendors or what I thought managing vendors was. So you really want to save yourself heartache, be as descriptive as you can in that job description of you will be making X amount of phone calls at least. You almost want your job description to be what KPIs you're going to give them when they get the job. Would be my
100%.
opinion.
Which makes the interview process so much easier. Most people, including myself, is why I'm not allowed to interview anybody, at least not in the first round. I am trying to figure out, do I like this person or not?
Yeah.
Does this person remind me of me or not? And listen, everybody saying all the right things reminds me of me. So, it's pretty easy to be manipulated. And I know this, so I don't do interviews. However,
and that's why with the interview process, you got to really be, I feel like the interview process is to figure out their personality. The job description should already be like, and that's why I ask people, give them the job description before they go out. Hey, does this job description look good to you? If this job description looks like something you can do or something you've done or something you're interested in, then let's go ahead and interview. But if you're not specific and your job description sounds like something on LinkedIn, then you're just going to get anybody and anyone that's just like, yeah, I need a job. And that's not what you want. The interview process is to figure out their personality. If your personalities clash, you should be asking situational-based, scenario-based questions. You should not be asking, can you do this? Because if your job description is good enough, the answer should be yes if they've already shown up for the job, for the interview.
So what you're saying is you're looking for personality types that match the areas of responsibility.
Yep. Both the people
in them. If the job requires you to be assertive, you need to find an assertive person.
Need to find an assertive person.
Maybe a detail-oriented person is not the right person to do an assertive person's role. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. I think so. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Absolutely. And that's why you have to be specific on that front-end job description and really understand who you're looking for. And the person who's interviewing has to, if you are not the one doing the interview, but you're the one creating the job description, whoever's doing the interview, you need to get with them and make sure they know I'm looking for somebody who can handle these things, right? Because then you can ask, hey, you've read the job description. Is there anything on there that you don't think you can do? How do you feel about these things? This job entails, go over it with them again if you have to, right? This job entails making a bunch of phone calls. You are going to be calling vendors. Just to let you know, you may get pushback on these vendors. I really need somebody who's going to be a dog about this, right? And then they'll understand those things. Then you spend your interview learning about the person through scenario-based questions so that you can learn about the personality to make sure, is this personality, one, going to fit for the job, right? If we need somebody who's going to be, assertive to get information, when we want to make sure they're that, then you're also making sure, is this assertive person going to fit in with the group of folks that are already in that area as well? Then you're using that time when you're talking to these people to learn about this person. Because again, I think a lot of not only is not having the correct job description a big issue when it comes to hiring people, but making sure personality wise that you hire the right person personality wise to fit that role as well. Because again, you can have somebody who can do the job blindfolded, but if you don't hire the right personality person, as soon as you put them in the mix of people, you're either going to have upset folks that are already in that department, which turnover we know is we'd rather keep the folks we've got than have to hire new people. Or the person that you hire is going to get in there and in a couple of weeks, they're going to be like, yeah, not for me. So, you really got to take all these things in account. Which is why we say this guide's going to get you over the finish line. This should get you the right job description in the correct way to where you can actually use your interview time to learn about the people. Which I think we went over this last time. 40% is can they do the job? 60% is do they have the personality to do the job? To me, anyways. So that's how I do it.
What are some ways that you evaluate somebody's personality?
One of the biggest thing is situational based questions. While a lot of my questions may be geared towards the job, right? Some of them are just like, for instance, one of the biggest things I like to ask during an interview is, I'll pull up a picture of something like a rooftop HVAC unit, right? I'll pull it up and I just straight up ask them, what am I looking at here, right? Can they
What about? Yeah, so we'll talk.
No, I'm saying this has to do. Well, this has to do with both, right? Do they have the aptitude to know it's a rooftop unit, right? But the other thing I'm looking at, are they nervous when I ask them a question, right? Are they are they thinking about it? Are they taking time to just stop and say, are they looking at it, just straight looking at it, right? Do they immediately just start guessing? This looks like this looks like that, right? And a lot of those things mean a lot, right? And what I'm getting from it is, one, do they know obviously is that a rooftop unit, but do they sound like they're BSing me, right? Does it sound like they're just coming up with something quickly because they feel like they want to give me an answer? Are they stopping and thinking? I appreciate someone who looks at something and says, you know what, hold on, okay, so what this looks like to me is, right? Are they panicking, right? Because we all know we can't have somebody on the other end of the phone that's reaching out to these technicians that could be underneath something or working on something at the time. We can't have somebody that's going to be like, at the other end, right? Are they saying a lot when they get in uncomfortable situations? And a lot of times I'm asking something that maybe they don't know the answer to, which is fine, but how they react is a big deal. One of my biggest questions that I like to ask people that gives me some insight of, and I even tell them this, not work related. I don't want to hear how do you prepare yourself for work to do your job. I want to hear how do you prepare yourself for work personally. Do you wake up? Are you a fireman? Do you wake up and you're like 10 minutes before work? I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to hop in my seat and boom, I'm in. Do you like to work out? Do you have any hobbies? How do you prepare yourself for the workday? Do you have children? I want to learn all these things and see, do they open up? Are they closed in? Are they extroverts? Are they introverts? Maybe for my data analysis team, I'm not looking for somebody who's crazy, open, and excited. But when you're on the other end of the phone, I need somebody with some energy, right? If I'm hiring for marketing and sales, what does that look like? What kind of energy? So when you're making this job description, you kind of need to understand the personality type that you're doing. One thing I recommend is if you're hiring for a department, everybody in that department, have them take a personality test. See what you're dealing with within the a department that you're bringing them into so that you kind of know what personality archetype is already working for the people that you have there. Or maybe between me and you, maybe the personalities in the department you have right now, that's why you're looking right now for somebody, because the personality you types have now are
not correct.
Not correct. Maybe the people that you have in your current situation aren't working out, and it hasn't worked out for the job description that they're currently doing. Mm-hmm. So it would help for you to figure out what personalities you have, what personalities in your system are already working. When we talk about looking at things that are already working, we're not necessarily talking about just your SOP and just what's working to get the job done. What personalities are working in this department as well? What personality types do you have that are killing it? Where do they come from? What's their background? What's their previous work? Early on, when me and Scott were looking at folks to work in our self-performing area, right, when we were first doing our first stab at this many, many years ago, what was our personality type, Scott? We wanted somebody that had worked in the restaurant industry. We learned that folks that worked in the restaurant industry, that personality type really worked in an entry-level facility maintenance coordinator role. We found out that those types of people work very well because they're personable. They know how to talk to people. They like to figure things out. They can deal with being in the weeds and having 5-6 emergencies going on at one time. I think it behooves you to just really look at the people you have in your department that work. And when I say that work, I mean, obviously everybody works, but I mean that like work for what you're trying to get done. Look at that when you're looking at your candidates. For sure. What matters more, experience or temperament? Temperament matters more. You can teach anybody anything, especially with the tools we have right now, but you cannot teach personality traits. You just can't. As I feel it is important to make sure that you have a very descriptive job description that lines out everything and assigns everything by that person's role and what lead and lag measures you want for their KPIs. Making sure you have the right person is as important, if not more important, when you start going through the interview process. The interview, you should be asking questions that reveal the person's character, not just their experience. They should have already told you their experience when you've done a resume. The resume should have told you everything you need to know experience-wise. The interview is the time to reveal this person's character. Ask questions that are scenario-based so that you know that you can get, that you're going to get, an honest, truthful answer. Put them on the spot. I know that might sound uncomfortable, and it might be uncomfortable for some people. So you got to make sure the person that's interviewing them is okay with maybe making somebody feel slightly uncomfortable by asking a question that they might not have expected, Or like I said, though, that's why I like doing the picture thing. They're not expecting me to whip out a picture of some sort of mechanical item or something that they might not know. And a lot of times I try to find something that I don't know if they'll know and really push their envelope. You may find out that this person knows more than what they said, but if they can answer it or try and answer it, you're really going to figure out the person's personality. Because we all know facility maintenance, again, is an ever evolving, and there's never nothing that needs to be done. There's always something that needs to be done, and you need somebody that can really handle that. And just, asking questions about asking the age-old question of, well, what's your background? Oh, really? Do you know how to use Excel? Great. These are all great questions. I'm not saying don't ask those. But if you're not asking questions that reveal their character or, are going to, have them critically think outside of what's on their resume, you're not doing yourself a favor.
So you got a bunch of people, you talked to 5 or 6 candidates. How do you evaluate them against each other? One of the things that we do internally is we created a scoring matrix. So we have categories. We have instructions on how to rate somebody between 1 and 5. No one gets 5s, but maybe there's 5 and something, but no one's getting probably multiple 5s in this. And it's just a handful of categories. And we try to be very objective about each one. And we have a minimum threshold somebody needs to be above, or we're not going to talk to them again, or for that role. We're going to not consider them for that role. Or we also have on the higher end, we have a number that, like, if somebody's above this number, this is somebody we want to find a position for. Like, gotta get them in the door somewhere. That tool is really, really helpful. We have an example of it as a part of this guide. We just use Google Sheets to build it out, and it auto scores, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that they're demonstrating the skills that you need, right? We know that entry-level coordinators are on the phone, right? How do they speak? Are they listening? Do they have empathy for the other person on the other side of the phone? I always tell people when I'm interviewing them, you know, this job is about communication and taking phone calls and solving problems. So you want to make sure that the person on the other end feels heard, right? You guys know as well as I do, when a store manager calls and they have a clogged toilet, that is the most important clogged toilet in every single one of your locations, according to them, right? So is the person on the other end of the phone going to give them that same feeling so they feel like they're heard and taken care of by your team? Or is it somebody who's going to get defensive or maybe be timid? Or, you got to make sure that, when you hire someone whose character determines how they operate and how the stores operate, you want to make sure that the person you interview during that interview lets you know those things. So be thinking about it when you're setting up questions, and Scott said nobody gets a 5. That's the God's honest truth, right? A 5 should be so hard to get. It really should be. Maybe some people come close, but it should be something that's really hard to get if you're going to make a system that brings you the best of the best. Because if you start handing out 5s all the time, everybody's going to be a 5 at some point, man. So I always tell people, nobody's a 5. I've never had a 5. I've never hired somebody. I've never met anybody that's just like, man, I'm not even a 5. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know of any 5s. It should just be such a hard goal to get to that when you find that person, like Scott said, it's no questions asked. I got to find a place for you. But yeah, you want to be very critical during that initial interview stage. Again, we do that by using a number system, 1 through 5.
What's that saying? 99% of people believe that they're above average,
which is not true.
Okay.
Even I know I've got stuff to work on. I mean, we all do. And I think what was it? Our teachers who were like, the people who think they know everything have everything to lose because they think they have nothing to gain. And that's very true. You don't want somebody who feels like they know it all, because if they come in thinking they know it all, they're not going to conform to the things that you need them to conform to that work good for your team. So you got to keep that into account for sure.
Yeah. How do you create an environment where excellence is the norm in your culture? For us, I thoroughly believe this. Excellence comes from consistency, from repeatedly doing the correct things over and over again, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what your energy level is in that moment. You just keep doing it. You set a standard, adhere to the standard. You don't let anybody else deviate from it either. And then you also incentivize things at that low level. You don't incentivize the results as much as you incentivize the input. We have a phrase internally called bonus the basics. We learned the term lead indicators, the activity that you're doing all the time, showing up on time, making calls, doing the work. That is what we incentivize for, not the results of that. Because if we have the right people doing the right things, we're going to get the right results. And if we don't get the right results, we're either doing the wrong things or we're not doing the things that are supposed to be done, which means we have the wrong people.
Exactly. But I want to add to that, one thing is, we talk about it's repetition, right? It is not just telling people these are the things that we need, or this is the standard that we set, but it's repeating it every single day, whether verbally repeating it and telling your team, hey team, great week. We need to make sure that we're pushing and we're the ones that's solving problems. Rewarding the basics, reward systems for showing up on time. Yeah, that seems simple, but we want everybody to show up on time. We got reward systems for folks, coming in first place on certain things, right? It sounds silly, but those rewarding those things and rewarding those basics keeps the good people around. And it lets you know who the people who might not be the good folks. Everybody says it's kind of like raising children, right? You tell your kid, hey man, don't touch that, right? Well, why? right? You need to continue to not only tell people this is what the standard is, but consistently tell them this is why we have the standard. This is why we have the standard. We bonus the basics because showing up on time is a big deal. Making sure you're in your seat and on time and on the phone at the right time is a big deal. We have a certain amount of window. We all know the best time to get a hold of somebody, especially a vendor, is on or before 12 o'clock, because by 12 noon, they're either halfway done with their job, tired from them taking lunch, or you're tracking them down to try and find them, right? You have to keep, not just set the standard, let them know why we have this standard, reinforce it with money. And let me say that one more time for the people in the back, reinforce it with money. No one cares about a shirt or a desk toy. We want to reinforce this with cold, hard money, right? And then you also want to be the person that's repeating it constantly. If you're the voice of the team, or whoever the voice of the team is, hey, thank you everybody for showing up on time. This is really awesome. Reward bonuses are going out this month. Hey, I really need you guys to make more phone calls between this time and this time. It's really important that we're in our seats at 8 o'clock. We want to make sure that we're reinforcing it to the point where when you're walking up, they know what you're about to say. They know what you're about. And it really does help. It seems repetitive, seems silly, whatever you may think it seems, it really does work. At least we have found great success over a long period of time with that standard of, set the standard, repeat the standard, bonus the basics. I think that's very, very simple to do.
And we've learned from failure here too. I mean, one time we ran a working, broken, missing, confusing exercise. And one of the things that got in the way of the organization that we were running at the time, Justin was with me at this company, was we identified that we didn't have enough contractors for additional options if the primary contractor was not in place. And so we came up with the idea to create an incentive program for adding new contractors. And we did some math, and we had a number of locations, a number of trades, and we just kind of came up with this number that this was the goal of new contractors that we needed to add. And we hit the goal, and it didn't move the needle. Well, not only did we hit the goal, we bonused people for hitting the goal of adding new vendors to our application. And it didn't change anything. And the reason it didn't change anything is because we were not very specific about what types of contractors to add and how to add them. To add them. It was just pure numbers. And here's what we learned from that. Not only we learned about the specificity up front, but we learned is that when you dangle a carrot for some type of goal, then what you get is people adjusting their behavior towards achieving that goal. Because the other thing that happened in addition to this is that the day-to-day work suffered. So we used to have this idea that people get their paycheck for their day-to-day work, and they get bonuses for the make it better work. And I've reversed my position on this, because what happens is folks start optimizing for the bonus, and they cut corners for the bonus, and the basics stop happening. And we went backwards in a lot of directions as a result of this idea that seemed like the right one at the time. And so that's why we pay so much attention to the fundamentals. That's why we pay so much attention to the everyday things, because it's those things that build the foundation, and you can't stop. And if you give people a reason to stop, especially if you give people an incentive to stop,
that's what I was going to say.
Focus on something else, it's problematic. And if that something else doesn't solve the problem, I think it's more than doubly problematic. It could be detrimental, like pretty significantly detrimental.
Yeah, and then I feel like too they'll lose sight of what you feel like is the most important, because in their brain they're like, oh, they're bonusing for us. This must be really, really important.
Must be very important.
Versus no, doing your job at its fullest is the most important thing. Everything else is extra that we need to get done. And again, if you have a great job description, a lot of these things could be put into that job description in detail. And if they know they're getting bonused on those basic things that are in their job description, and I feel like I know you're going to get a better quality of work from that person. They're going to feel appreciated. They're going to feel listened to. And it's really going to solve the underlying, your underlying issue of just the daily work getting behind. And again, you'll get when you realize that you bonus the basics. We're not saying at all, like, don't bonus extra things when you're doing them, but don't make that the only thing. Like if you're not, the point bonusing the basic, a point of emphasis, because then that's all they're going to focus on. Right. And I think I said it a second ago, like they're going to focus where the money is. So if you're putting the money in the wrong things or bonusing in the wrong things, or only putting the bonuses in the extras, that's all you're going to get out of everybody is the extras.
Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah, it's like I get a bad grade on the test because I know that the teacher's going to give me extra credit for something. It's like, I don't need to do good on this test. I just need to pass it because I know at some point I'm going to get an opportunity to get extra credit, and that'll bridge the gap for me. Versus being like, no. It's very important that on this test, you get the best grades you can. I'm a bonus you on this test for the best grades you're going to get. And then later on, if we need extra, I can get with you and extra's extra. Extra needs to be just that extra.
Finally, reporting is a really big deal. Everybody plays harder when you're keeping score. And so score needs to be kept. It's important. It's healthy. It's good that multiple people performing the same role know how they're stacking up against the other people who are performing that role.
Yeah, nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to lose at all. And that's a trait that you need to look for when you're hiring. Are they competitive? Is that something, maybe that's one of your questions you want to ask. Are they competitive? You want to create a team that continues to want to continue to do better time and time again. I use the phrase complacency kills. And we're not sitting here telling you that we don't ever have any problems with anybody ever. When you start tracking these things and putting these things in the forefront, you're going to start noticing either some people that you hire, you'll notice these things before you hire them. Maybe you'll go through these things and see some of these traits inside the people that you currently have. It might need to make some changes. But if you're not thinking about these things in the context of, how do I want to hire and how do I want to retain these folks, then you're going to put yourself in a bad spot. And with the start of the new year, the next hire you'd make after using this guide, you're going to see such a big change. And the other thing is hiring somebody competitive. I can't speak for Scott, but when me and Scott are in the same room or we're doing something, like we get competitive. And I've known him since I was 11 years old. I am as competitive today with him as I was when we were 11 years old skating in the street, right? Like if he does something, I need to figure out how to do it too. And how can I do it better? Competitiveness often creates creativity and great ideas. You will get a lot of creativity and great ideas out of a group of people that are competitive. So yeah, you definitely want to take that into account for sure.
Yeah, because we both hate to lose.
Look, I never thought I would have played tennis with you for 7 hours almost. Me losing was not an option just as much as you losing was not an option. And we were going to bring ourselves to straight exhaustion until the decision was made. So,
and you won every game. I was not sore the next day though. And you were.
I was.
So I won the war.
Yeah, that's true. He's like, I might not win this, but tomorrow I will win this.
All right, run it back.
Yeah, run it back again. It's like you might win, but I'm going to make sure you never want to play me again. It's healthy. You want to find folks. I mean, that's why we talk about doing the personality traits. I think it's very important that you find out the folks that you're trying to hire just as much as the folks you have working for you. I'm not saying do a personality trait, fire people who don't fit. Like that's not what I'm saying at all, but maybe two people would work better together and you might need to switch some people around in different departments, right? Your goal for hiring and retaining of people should always be like, am I putting those people in the best position to win? Not am I putting myself in a position to win? Am I putting myself as a COO in a position to win? But if I'm putting the people that I'm hiring in a position to win, I'm going to win. Trust me. So don't think about it in such a selfish, am I hiring the best people to reach what goal I think I have? But am I hiring folks that will help the people that are on my team win? Am I putting the person that I'm hiring in a position to win and then set them up to do so? And you'll realize everything else will fall into place. It really will. We talked about this in the last, I was wearing my Saved by the Bell shirt in that episode, but this isn't the same shirt. Anybody who's been following along, this is a totally different, new to this podcast shirt. But in one of the episodes, we talked very heavily on why personality means a lot, because it's not just personality for the position, it's personality for the team, personality to win, personality to be competitive. With AI tools, we can teach them what they need to know. We cannot teach personality. Cannot teach them to all of a sudden be competitive. You just can't teach those things. So it's very important when you're going through and you're thinking about the job description. If you're not thinking about when you're writing that job description, if your brain isn't also thinking about in this job description, what personality archetype do I need to look for? You're setting yourself up for failure as well. That's got to play into account a good bit. Just as important as the specificity for what they need to do, the specificity for the personality needs to be just as clear to you, because you want to know who you're getting. And again, it's not to say that it's going to work out, right? People can gas you up during an interview, but that's why I tell people, I don't do just one interview. Never have, never will. Normally I have at least 3. Sometimes I can do 2 if I feel like I know that person very well after the second one, but you should be interviewing multiple times. I also think it's behoove you to give them some homework for that interview. Do they want the job? How much are they willing to do for the job before they get the job? These are all things that you need to be taking into account when you're filling out for your job description and your personality type of who you want to hire.
We did that when we hired developers. We give an assignment, and we intentionally leave gaps in the instructions.
Yeah.
And what we're looking for, and we actually, and we pay for the output because someone's going to be doing like a day's worth of work for us. We usually don't use the output,
Right.
But we pay for it. And so we get a good sense of like, how well does this person communicate? How fast did they carve out time?
Yeah. Did they ask
to
questions?
Get it done? How did they ask the questions? What kind of questions did they ask? Did they say, this isn't working? Or did they say, hey, I'm having an error here. Here's what it is. Here's what I think is going to fix it. Can I get access to this? And you really learn a lot about people and what it's going to be like working with them when you give them an assignment. So
a day's worth of pay, far better than weeks worth of training to find out once you're like, hey man, you're ready to go out on your own, that they're like, this isn't for me. Or you find out, let's say you get in 3 weeks of training and then you find out this person just didn't work out or they didn't know what I thought they knew. Yeah. So I think that's a great tactic, especially when you're talking about hiring somebody for front-end development, or you're looking to hire somebody in a very specific department,
like a marketing
give
role.
them a project.
Say, hey,
give them a project.
Do a competitive market analysis on this, this segment or this customer or competitor or whatever.
Yeah. I think we did that with sales too. We did that with some sales folks too, I believe. We sent them out and said, hey, put us together a lead list of who you think, our ideal customer is based upon your research of us, right? I mean, worst case scenario, you wasted a day of pay. Best case scenario, you find somebody who asks the right questions. Best case scenario, you get something back and you're like, wow, this dude's an all-star. Glad I did that. There is no wrong way that it can go. I mean, there really isn't. You're either going to find out they're good, find out they're okay, or find out they're great. I think that's a great thing to add to your arsenal when you're talking about hiring somebody, is give them a project. I mean, it's just like I say, it's kind of just like giving them the scenario of looking at these photos. Look at these pictures. Tell me what you see. And leaving it broad. Are they asking you questions? Are they asking themselves questions? If we were to sum up everything, take the time on the front end to research what they need to do, how they're going to do it, and what type of person do we want to do this role? And I think if you spend time trying to figure out those three things with your team, with yourself, whoever's going to be in charge of them, whoever they're going to work with, you need everybody's input on it to make sure that the next hire you get is a long-term contributing member of the team.